Hello dear participants. Welcome to another module of the diploma course in the teaching of English, which is titled Constructivist Approach to Language Learning. After reading this module, the teachers will develop an insight into the nature of constructivism as a learning theory, understand the basic assumptions of constructivist approach to learning and the implications for the constructivist classroom, understand the two types of constructivism and their relevance in the teaching learning process, implement the 7E model of learning, and finally develop lesson plans based on the 7E instructional model. Before we begin our discussion on constructivism, let us reflect on how we have understood and developed the sense of the term learning theory over these years as teachers. The notion or idea of learning theory simply does not mean how students learn and retain information. Rather, it provides a framework for teachers to direct their teaching, address various learning styles and needs, and create a conducive, effective, and efficient environment for learning to happen. In the last century, we witnessed a shift from the traditional teacher-centered approach to a learner-centered approach, and more recently to an approach which is based on learning outcomes, which is learning-centered. Some of the major theories that impacted the field of education are behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, humanism, and connectivism. This module, as I mentioned earlier, intends to offer insights into the nature of learning according to the constructivism as a learning theory and how we can apply our understanding of the principles of constructivism in a language classroom. So I have to mention the names of two prominent figures in constructivism. The first one is Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist, and the second one is Lev Vygotsky, a Soviet psychologist. So I'll be mentioning about them in detail a little later. So what exactly is constructivism? Now if I take the words of Draper 2002, constructivism is the philosophy of or the belief that learners create their own knowledge based on interactions with the environment, including their interactions with other people. In other words, constructivism proposes that learners learn by actively constructing their knowledge through interaction with each other. In this process, they utilize their previous experiences. Any effective learning is a process of construction and reconstruction of the knowledge. Here, learning is seen as a process than a mere accumulation or acquisition of information. Now let us check the main assumptions of constructivism. The first main assumption is learning is active and contextualized. Learners negotiate and establish links with the previous knowledge and try to create new knowledge. Errors are a sign of learning. Teachers are facilitators and learners are autonomous. And learning is a socio-dialogical activity. So what is the role of a teacher in a constructivist classroom? So if you ask me, in a constructivist classroom, the teacher acts as a bridge between the learners and the learning. The teacher encourages different perspectives. Both the teacher and the learners become co-constructors of the knowledge, and the learners are given authentic tasks which correspond to real-life situations. So remember, as teachers, in a constructivist classroom, the teacher's role is that of a facilitator, and we should encourage learners to use higher order thinking skills. Now, let us go to the two major types of constructivism. The first one is called cognitive constructivism. You remember I mentioned the name of Piaget a little while ago. So Jean Piaget is the one who actually contributed to cognitive constructivism. The principles of cognitive constructivism are rooted in the works of Piaget, and he is actually known as the father of child psychology. He did not consider intelligence to be a fixed trait. Rather, he was of the opinion that children discover and explore the world around them, adjust their thoughts, and then learn. So, cognitive constructivism states that knowledge is something that is actively constructed by the learners based on their existing cognitive structures, or we call it schema, which develops as a result of their previous experiences. Therefore, learning is relative to their stage of cognitive development. Now, what is the implication of constructivism in a language classroom? So, as teachers, we should not consider learners' mind as a tabula rasa or an empty slate. Rather, we have to understand that learners come to our classrooms with a previous set of knowledge, and this knowledge has to be effectively utilized. Learners actively assimilate and accommodate new material in their schema or their existing cognitive structures. So, our aim as teachers should be to assist and facilitate the students in assimilating this information to their existing knowledge and also enabling them to make appropriate modifications to their existing knowledge. Now, the second main type is social constructivism. The idea of social constructivism was developed by the Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky argued that cognitive functions originate when the child interacts with society. He postulated that the child learns not only from the environment but through the interactions with it. He based his theory on the social nature of learning, as children are born into a social world and learning comes through social interaction. Vygotsky took the cognitive theory of learning a step further by saying that knowledge is constructed by learners in response to interaction with environmental stimuli and with culture in cognitive development. He believed that language and culture both plays an essential role in human intellectual development. Vygotsky took the cognitive theory of learning a step further by saying that knowledge is constructed by learners in response to interaction with environmental stimuli and with culture in cognitive development. He believed that language and culture both plays an essential role in human intellectual development. He distinguished between the two levels of learning, which are the actual level and the potential level. The level of actual development is the level of development that the learner has already reached and is the level at which the learner is capable of solving problems independently. Whereas, if you see the level of potential development, it is also called as zone of proximal development, or ZPD, is the level of development that the learner is capable of reaching under the guidance of teachers or with the collaboration with peers. Now, what is the implication of social constructivism in the classroom? Since social constructivism upholds the learning that happens as a result of social interaction, and it is not only an individual but a shared experience, social constructivism promotes that in classroom we have to use methods like case studies, research projects, problem solving methods, brainstorming, collaborative learning, or group tasks. Now, when we speak about constructivism, one more important model is there which I have to discuss, which is called the 7E instructional model. It was proposed by Eisencraft. Each of the 7 E's describes a phase of learning, and each phase begins with the letter E. And the phases are elicit, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, and extend. The 7E model allows learners and teachers to experience common activities and use these activities to build on prior knowledge and experience. They also construct meaning and continually assess the understanding of a concept. This instructional model can be used with learners of all ages, including adults. Now, as a final part of this discussion today, I also have to mention another significant taxonomy or classification that is based on constructivist approach. We call it the Bloom's taxonomy. It was an instructional model proposed by Benjamin Bloom, who did an extensive research to find a method to classify the thinking behavior of mind. Bloom's tried to classify thinking based on the cognitive levels of complexity. The lowest three levels are knowledge, comprehension, and application, while the highest three levels are analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Later, a new group of cognitive psychologists led by Anderson, a former student of Bloom, revised this taxonomy, and it was referred to as the BRT, or the Bloom's revised taxonomy. The revised version consists of 6 levels, namely remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. This taxonomy acts as a very important pedagogical tool for teachers to design their course outcomes and lesson plans. Moreover, assessment questions may also be framed based on this cognitive and knowledge domain. So, to sum up, in this video, we discussed the notion of constructivism as a learning theory, the two major types of constructivism, which is cognitive and social, and their implications in the language classroom, the 7E instructional model of learning based on the constructivist philosophy, the Bloom's revised taxonomy, and the various knowledge dimensions of the cognitive levels. And with that, we are coming to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching and wish you all the best with the modules on constructivism. Thank you.